See, Exhibit B, which is the FBI stuff, they actually attached the FBI documentation or whatever it is that they had with Vargas, but they attached it as, under seal. So they have to, the prosecution has to protect themselves from this prosecutorial misconduct. So they have to show the goods with the, with the FBI. So the goods are under seal. Unfortunately, we can't see it. But I do know that they did attach, the transcript of a hearing from another case. Whether that's precedent or not, I don't know, because you have to take the individual facts of the case. Because this is not like, the transcript is not like a published opinion by the Court of Appeal that you can rely on. So if there was a case that would allow them to do whatever it is they want to do, they would have a published opinion from the Court of Appeal as precedent. Okay, so this is just a transcript. It's not even anything. It's how a court ruled in a certain case. It's not, I don't know if it...
Darylyn Johnson is who it is.
Maybe you should read it. I'll go to my phone and I can listen while I'm...
Okay.
In case I fall asleep. No, I don't think I will.
Yeah. Oh, 5 minutes. Get your comforters and your pillows ready. Put the sleep timer on the TV and chill back. Let me see here. I don't think it would take too long to read, honestly.
Well,
it's pretty big text font.
Like, read the notice and the basis for the notice. That might help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see here.
Yeah. Read it all soft and stuff.
Read it all soft. What's up? Hey, here we go. What's up? Can't wait to have you on. He's going to be calling in tomorrow, so I'm excited. Yeah, just reach out to me whenever's good, even if, definitely don't rush. Take your time, whatever. I'll be live 9 to 5 or possibly longer, depending on the court hearing stuff. But I'll be covering a bunch of different cases tomorrow. Shout out to you for that video. I know you were explaining more in detail with that video in the DMs, but definitely save it tomorrow. And then that way you can go ahead and explain all that to everybody, because I think it'll be interesting. I can't wait to get you on panel too, because then once we get you on panel, we can screen share different things while we're chit-chatting and stuff. So, and definitely if you got a Five Below by you, this is definitely a cheap way to... That's what I first used when I started mine, until I got this microphone here on Amazon. But yeah, I'm excited to have you on tomorrow. Shout out. Awesome video. Definitely go hit up the community tab. I put out a community tab with the video, and then also a link to the conversation when the architect hopped in last Friday and chatted with us. So it was a pleasure meeting you. Thank you for your time and your company, and thank you for your effort for the community of the true crime and all the victims and the families, and questioning the stuff that doesn't make sense, because there's not enough people out there that do that. And definitely when there's more than one voice, we become a collective force, and that's when hopefully positive change can start to take place. Read it all soft and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. All right, so this is the notice of intent not to cross-examine defense witnesses, district court decision, and records to explain. Yeah, what's up?
It says notice of intent not to cross-examine defense witnesses, plural.
Yeah, plural.
Okay.
And records to explain witness contact. Oh, really? So that's what it is. The FBI is explaining why they contacted Vargas, I suppose.
The FBI.
Yeah. At the hearing on the state's motion for a protective order and defendant's third motion to compel, held on August 18th, 2023, the court allowed the state to reserve cross examination of two witnesses, Gabriela Vargas, who the defense disclosed without a CV the day before the hearing, and Lee Larkin, who we just watched tonight, for whom the defense disclosed a PowerPoint presentation for the first time during her direct examination. The state has determined that it need not cross examine either of these witnesses. In addition, the state mentioned during its argument at the hearing that Judge Whitney in Canyon County ruled on a similar issue 1 week prior to the hearing, and that the state would provide the written ruling once available. The transcript of that hearing is now available, and the relevant portion of the transcript is attached as Exhibit A. Finally, at the hearing on August 23rd, 2023, defense counsel suggested in open court that the state had improperly contacted Miss Vargas.
And it wasn't the state, though. Here's where it was the FBI. It was the federal government.
Well, I suppose when Bill Thompson instructs,
he's basically saying that the state. So if I were the prosecution, I would say that I would just say that's FBI shit. I don't have anything to do with the FBI. But he's putting himself in it.
Well, he did, because he reached out to the FBI and said, well, he said he reached out to the investigators to go contact Miss Vargas to find out what was going on.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why Ann Taylor suggested that to the judge on the 23rd of August, because he's the one that states, he's the one that was admitting that there was contact, and he's the one that admitted as to why the contact was taking place in the first place.
Okay. You're right.
So he kind of admitted, that he did it. The state would ask in this court to grant the requested protective order or permit the state to present the information it seeks to protect the court in an in-camera hearing. And that was submitted the 29th of August. So certificate of delivery, I hereby certify that true and correct copies of the notice of intent not to cross-examine defense witnesses, district court decision, and the records to explain witness contact was served on the following in the manner indicated below. E-filed. So this is filed 8/18/2023 by Deputy Clerk Harris Angela. Let's see here, Canyon County. So in the District Court of the 3rd Judicial District of the State of Idaho, and for the County of Canyon. Transcript of proceedings held on August 11th, 2023 before the Honorable Thomas W. Whitney, District Court Judge. That's who did the transcript. All right, for the state, for the defendant, Gabrielle McCarthy. So this is, let's see, I, Kimberly R. Hopkins, RPR, CSR number 703, one of the duty appointed, qualified, and acting official reporters of the 3rd Judicial District of the state of Idaho, do hereby certify that foregoing transcript made of the proceedings in the manner of the motion hearing before the Honorable Thomas W. Whitney is complete, a transcription as I was able to make. Well, why don't you have a recording and then you go back over your shit and make sure you add what you forgot? Because I think it's pretty fucking important when it comes.
It's exactly. Okay, so that's exactly what I was going to say. Oh my gosh. No, yeah. So there should, well, sometimes when they're saying this, they say that they have a recording as well as their transcription. So
it's called quality control.
But that's exactly what I was going to say. But the other thing is, yeah. No. Yes, they do. They have an audio recording. And sometimes they say it, sometimes they don't. So I don't know if they did or didn't, but that is true. The other thing is, again, this is not law. Okay, this is how a court ruled in another case. It's not. It's you can't you can't use it as a precedent from the Court of Appeal. You know, it's like this is how, I mean, another court can rule differently because it's not set. It's only when it gets appealed that you make law. You know, the Court of Appeal makes the law. So if you have something that, and I know this because when you have something that's emerging or is iffy or it's never been challenged before, like the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act, where you donate body parts, when you have something that hasn't been up at the Court of Appeal, you don't have law. So you're relying on these things, but again, it's not law. So that's all I will caution people about. You know, it could become law, but it's not.
I just don't understand why you even have that, and I'm sorry.
Mm.
Like, I have to double check my work. If I
Yeah.
fucking put, if I, oh, sorry, I forgot to put a fucking, like, my bad. I did it, I tried. If it falls apart, hey, sorry.
Well,
No.
no,
Yeah,
you know,
make
and
sure.
yeah, so trans court reporters, so like if my client has a deposition, they get a chance to review it and make sure it's correct. Otherwise, they make corrections. And these types of things, nobody makes corrections. It's not given to anybody to make corrections. So that's very true. You know, unless the judge is going to read it and make corrections, I don't think that happens. It doesn't happen. So, you know, it is true. That's the exact point I was going to make before you made it. But
It just makes fucking sense.
yeah.
you know, this is, this is
And
like
the
when
other
it
the
comes
other
to
thing is
these,
that
this
this is
is
not law, it's
serious
just how
shit.
another court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it says purchased Fairfax Identity Lab, and they were involved in an examination of one of the hairs recovered from the victim's underwear, and that is why we are making this request. That's the only way we can get this information from them, the court. All right, so that motion is granted. I will sign the order, or rather, I will sign the subpoena. All right. The next issue is the state's motion in Lemine for non disclosure or for a protective order barring disclosure that was filed on July 14th, 2023. And Mr. Lagerwall, Mr. Jorgensen, who is going to be addressing that issue, question mark. Mr. Jorgensen, I'll be addressing that today, Judge. The court, okay, do you wish to be heard on that motion? Mr. Jorgensen, this is where I need other voices. You want to read some of this, Yoli? I'll be the court. If not, I can. Jorgensen, Your Honor, go ahead. Jorgensen, thank you. So, Your Honor, as to the legal argument
If you
contained.
if you want me to be a voice, I can. I can be the court.
Don't wait. There you go. Can you read from the?
I can read. Can I
No, I
read? Of
mean,
course I can
no,
read.
no, from the StreamYard. Let me
Yeah.
see. Let me see. Is this too much? No, that's too much.
Can I read?
No, I meant from the. Oh shoot! I meant from the screen.
No, I can read.
Let's see here.
So go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. So, Your Honor, as to the legal argument contained in this state's brief of memorandum in support of this motion in Lamont, I don't have much to add. So, what would I like to do? So, what I would like to do is give the court, for the record, a general overview of specifically what we're asking not be disclosed and why. And then, if the court has any questions for me as to the nature of this investigative genetic genealogy or to our legal argument, I will defer to the court. But the overarching purpose of this motion, Judge, that's a good word, overarching, is to ensure that the state is fully transparent both. Ooh, I like that. Both with the court and with the defense regarding the investigation of the case and what evidence the state will or, in this case, will not be introducing at trial. Because as we know, we will not be introducing any of this evidence at trial. This is why we believe it is not discoverable and is immaterial to the defense's preparation. Whoa, this is the same kind of shit.
Yeah.
Where's
So
Canyon County?
yeah.
Where's
Okay.
Where's
So let me
Canyon
just make a
County?
comment. So
Yeah,
if it's in Idaho somewhere, but here's the thing.
it's the same shit. Okay.
It is. But so you think about a lie detector test. If the defense gives a lie detector test to their client and they fail, they don't have to send it to the defense counsel. So they're trying to make the same argument here that the genealogy stuff, that what they did, they don't have to turn it over. But it's a bit different when you need to determine how did Brian Koberger become a suspect in the first place. And it's a bit different. Okay, so
this is crazy.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Canyon County. Like this is what they're like. This is a shit right here. Hey, this is but it's not going to be discoverable because it's okay. So why are you coming at the court with that shit if you're not going to use it? Why?
Yeah, it's because the basis. Yeah, because it's because they used it to determine that Brian Koberger was a suspect. So Ann Taylor wants to know, I want to see that because that's how you began this thing. You determined he was a suspect by using tools. So I want to see it.
Yeah, tools that you're patching tires.
Yeah.
If the DNA if your DNA profile is like a tire, there's and what they're doing is there's chunks of that tire that are missing, and they're filling in those chunks. That's why the LE reaches out to them in the first place, is because they can't get a complete profile, and they need them to create the complete profile.
Right. And do we know the facts of this case? Based on what you read, do we know the facts of this case? This particular case?
No.
You don't. And that is the point. You need to know the facts of the particular case. And when you have a case like Brian Koberger, where the question is, how did he become a suspect? Well, that's a different question. I don't know what the question here is. It's not in context.
It's almost like that silent grand jury.
Yeah, it's not in context. So I don't know what the facts are in this case. Tell us why this has come about. And they don't. That part of the transcript, or if there is a transcript, is not there. So
that, man,
again, this is not law. This is how one courtroom or judge determined. Yeah, this is how one judge determined, based on particular facts, determined an issue on this. So we don't know the facts in this case.
And it's part of the Boise metropolitan area. That's creepy. It looks like, maybe somebody was learning from somebody. It said, that being said, it is not the state's, listen to this, that being said, it is not the state's prerogative to decide and dictate what is and is not discoverable. And that is why we brought this motion before the court. With respect to what is investigative genealogy, investigative genetic genealogy, I would just also note for the record that Section 3 in the factual and procedural background of our memorandum is really more an offer of proof, or rather the state's recitation of the facts as we understand them. Sections 1 and 2 really just detail the history of the case. I don't think there's any dispute as to that background, but as to Section 3, I just want to clarify, we are not asking the court to make findings of fact. We are offering to the court our understanding of this investigative practice. So it's what they understand.
And it's what's included, if you go back, it's what's included in the motion. I don't know that they've attached the motion. I don't know what's included. If you go back a little bit.
Oh.
Yeah. They talk about the background. So it says procedural. Okay, just another section 3. In the factual and procedural background in the memorandum, which is motion, okay, is really more an offer of proof. Okay, I don't know. I don't know what section 3 says.
Well, this is
Did they
Canyon
attach the
County.
motion along with it?
I don't know. I just saw the transcript,
Yeah, but
and
the
then
motion,
it was,
what?
and then that's the end of it. Yeah. Let me see here. Where did
Continue.
Yeah, I'm trying to find my spot.
God, this gets under my skin.
So with that, what is investigative genetic genealogy? I would begin by noting I am not a scientist. This information that we are offering to the court is really a broad, overarching layman's perspective and understanding of what this DNA profile is and what was done with it with respect to the genealogy part of the investigation. So I begin first by noting the difference between STR and SMP or SNP in the context of DNA science. We heard a lot about that these last few episodes.
Yeah, he's talking about science now, although he's not a scientist.
Let me see here. This is probably just some report that they had, and then they looked it up on Google. Now STR stands for short tandem repeat. When we think of DNA evidence, just colloquially, colloquially. That's like Louisville. You got to talk with marbles in your mouth.
Just colloquially, culturally.
You got to talk with marbles in your mouth. Colloquially. There we go. Culturally. That is generally.
That's colloquial.
There's a lot of freaking lees. This is generally what we're talking about in this short tandem repeat profile that is obtained from a sample of DNA at a crime scene and is then screened through the CODIS database. So what a short tandem repeat is this is a technique that has been, again, according to my understanding, has been developed by DNA scientists over the course of decades, and the purpose of it is to basically identify the portions of the genome where we see the greatest variability. So human beings, just a species, share approximately 99.9% of their DNA. So STR is a technique that is designed to get that 0.01% or approximately 3 million points of data from the DNA. So the genome has approximately 3 billion. STR looks at 3 million specific points, which we saw that last night, and those are taken from particular loci or locations along the various chromosomes. So every individual has 23 chromosomes. We saw that last night. 22 are autosomes, and where all the genetic information is, and then the 23rd is an X or a Y, which determines the individual's sex. As so, STR looks again at specific points, and it compares those for variability. And from that, scientists are able to gain probability estimates to link a sample to a suspect. In SMP or an SMP, it says as from that. Yeah, they're able to gain probability estimates to link a sample to a suspect. Yep.
A suspect.
All
right.
And an SMP or an SMP is a single nucleotide polymorphism. Now in shout out CC Moore, thank you, because I heard those words enough. Now in STR, these variability points, they're summarized in letters TS, AS, CS, and GS. Each one of those T and A or T and T or C and G that in a single nucleotide polymorphism is an SMP. We saw all that shit last night. Watch it. It's a lot easier to understand with the graphs and shit like that.
Oh my God. Yeah.
In cases such as this, where the genetic material that was found at the crime scene, or in this case, found in the victim's
underwear.
Clothing, yeah, the clothing.
Not in a knife sheath.
Yeah, it's the DNA.
We're
It
talking
was a
about
hair.
specimen found in the victim's underwear. What kind of
Mhm.
well,
A
yeah,
hair.
so we don't have a hair in this case. We don't have a
No,
hair in Brian Koberger's case.
no, and they have a hair.
A
So
hair.
yeah, which is way the other shit. It's like,
It's
oh,
not
that
touch DNA.
the sheath could have been tossed on a sweater that BK wore that
Exactly.
was in somebody else's car, and they could have threw it on there, grabbed it, went in and did the crime, and his train, his his, uh, his skin cells are on there.
Exactly.
You're constantly shedding skin cells all the time. Where do you think dust comes from as well? It's a collection of things.
Hmm.
In this case, it was a hair. That particular hair may not contain enough genetic information to get an entire STR profile. That was the case in this case. And so when the state sent the hair that was tested by Dr. Green to his lab at UC Santa Cruz, what Dr. Green's methodology is to use his proprietary and developed method to extract essentially every SMP that he can from that hair. Every single nucleotide polymorphism that he can extract, he extracts. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily give him enough for an STR profile, but what it did do in this case is it enabled him to create an SMP profile that can be used for genealogical purposes. Now, what we're talking about with the SMP profile for genealogical purposes is ultimately really the same thing that we're now familiar with in our common everyday culture with things such as Ancestry.com. For example, I myself got an Ancestry.com profile for me. I had to spit it in a little tube. You send your spit off, they make a SMP profile, and they upload it in their database. And that's precisely what investigative genetic genealogy is. So, from this SMP profile that Dr. Green developed from his testing of that hair, an investigator uploaded that profile into a genealogical database just as you or I would with Ancestry 23andMe or 23andMe, something along those lines. We were just talking about it a little bit in the show. S- Sending off sample and uploading it into the profile into a database just as you or I would, not as LE would, just as you and I would. In this case, particularly as we noted in Chambers, the investigator was affiliated with the FBI, and then the database, whatever database they use, that is a private company, a private third party. And so the state does not have any information from that private third party or from the FBI that we could is that what's taking place right now? Is that why they don't have documentation? Is that why they don't
Well,
have
yeah.
some
So
information
notice,
because of this right here? That's what we've been saying.
probably, but
That's what
uh
we've been
in
saying.
this case, and that's what in this case, okay, this particular case is different than Brian Koberger's. In Brian Koberger's case, they don't have a hair. Sorry,
Yeah,
and
it
that's a
works
big
both
difference.
ways. That's the damn truth, architect. Works both ways. Sorry, I'm reading these documents, so I don't have a
It's
chat
okay.
feed up. Once I get different fucking screens, I can do that shit. But right now, all I can do is, um, so this says, I mean, it says it right there. That's what I've been saying. I think might be taking place a while back. Was that
Mhm.
I don't think maybe they just don't have it because they're not privy to it. We're not certain what we could or would get if we were ordered by the court to try. But the point that we want to make is regardless of the court's ruling on that, this was simply an investigative
Executive
technique that
technique.
was aimed at trying to find a suspect. And again, see, trying to find it, they thank you for your for your your honesty, right? No, what you did was fucked up. And again, it's not going to be used at trial because the whole purpose of it is to simply to identify potential suspects. So it's we didn't do it because we knew no, we wanted to try and get some potential suspects. So it doesn't matter how we got to BK because it was simply we were looking for suspects and he happened to pop up. So why should we tell you how we
How?
got to BK? Is that what the is
But
this
that's a
what they were
suspect. That's not
is
enough
this
to arrest.
is this what they were telling? Is this what they were saying in this private, this silent grand jury thing?
Yeah, but you don't
Is this
suspect
what they were saying?
doesn't mean he did it. It's a suspect. There might be other suspects like those unknown DNAs that were found. So
Yeah, but
what it means it's a potential
I don't know. Something's
suspect. It
fishy.
doesn't mean that you go down to his parents' house and with the SWAT team and arrest him. It's a tool. It's an investigative
Something's
tool.
fishy. Something's fishy. Cause this sounds
God.
so this is like cookie cutter shit right here. I'm reading this shit and you can just basically apply it to what's going on and it would totally make fucking sense.
And so why wouldn't if this genetic DNA genealogy shit if it named him if it caused BK to be a suspect, why not watch
Right,
him? Why
Tracy?
not interrogate him? Why not interview him? Why so you have Dylan saying that he had bushy eyebrows. Okay, so that's enough? That's enough right there? That he had bushy eyebrows and you have this genetic genealogy tree that so that's enough to go banging down his door and his parents' door? I mean, God.
Well, and this is the crazy thing is like they're trying to get this the defense is trying to get this exculpatory evidence in the state's own paperwork. It says that while it says that BF has evidence pointing to Koberger,
Yes.
it also says in the same damn sentence that she also has exculpatory
Exculpatory
evidence.
evidence.
So it's like, why aren't you offering it? The defense has to have a seventh fucking request? Come on now. It's like it's like it's like two fucking kids playing and one of them wants to fucking play with the toy that the other kid has in the toy box while the other kid's busy with something else and the kid that's busy with the toy but does no, you can't play with the toy that's in the toy box. I'm busy. What the No, you can't have it. Seven
Yeah.
times. Can I please have it? Can I
No.
please? Can I please? No, you can't have it, even though it's in the toy
Mm.
box. Come on. Once a genealogist constructs a family tree and identifies a particular family line that may be connected to again that hair from which the SMP profile was derived, it is incumbent on law enforcement to then find their own independent evidence to investigate those individuals to determine whether there's an actual reason to believe any of them may have committed this crime.
Yes. Oh my God.
And just to emphasize, the genealogist is doing the same sort of genealogy that you and I would do with an ancestry type profile. There is, of course, the added reality that law enforcement has access to, databases and things that a common citizen would not. But again, it is purely
Oh, yeah.
investigative. It's just an investigative tool. We're not doing anything wrong. It's purely for a
Yeah.
lead or a tip to give investigators a potential avenue
Mhm.
to investigate the suspect again
In other
independently.
words, in other words, it's not probable cause.
Right. And so that's why they don't need to say shit. And
Mhm.
so that is why we're not introducing it at trial. It was just an investigation. It is not substantive evidence, and that again is why we believe it is not discoverable.
Substantive.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
As
In this
I'm
case.
tired.
In this
I worked
case.
all day. I'm tired. Uh, and as I noted at the outset, hey, you're a lawyer. I'm not. Your Honor, our brief I think really says all. I wish I would have been one that says all that needs to be said about Rule 16 in our position as to know how it relates to this type of investigation. If the court has any questions for me on that, I would be happy to address it or any additional questions as to the IGG. So the court
The
basically
courts.
says,
So take your time.
take your time. So, Your Honor, sorry about that. I will get to your question. Mr. Lagerwald just wanted me to take a brief moment to clarify some of the science that I summarized with respect to
Dear God.
STR. So, STR, I think I generally described it correctly, but specifically, it is genotyping of what's that word, Yoli? Allele? Allele?
Allele. Mhm.
Allele. Length at defined.
Allele.
Allele. At
Loci.
marbles. Length at defined loci along these
Loci.
chromosomes. Loci. And then an allele being a variation of a gene at the locus. So that's the variability we're talking about. I just wanted to make sure we're accurate for the record as to, again, our description of that practice. With that, Your Honor, I'd be happy to address your questions.
So the court. So genealogical databases of some sort were used to narrow down the search by law enforcement in this case. But those databases were not used specifically identify Mr. Dalrymple as the person the state believes to have committed the crime. You have to scroll down.
Oh, sorry.
In this case, is that accurate?
So, Mr. Lagerwall, this is my understanding, Your Honor. My understanding is that the genealogical work that was done identified the Dalrymple family line, and then it was that information that our local law enforcement used to begin looking into various members of the Dalrymple family, ultimately identifying Mr. Dalrymple as their prime suspect.
The court. Okay, got it. Okay, all right. I don't have any other questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge.
The court. Mr. McCarthy, are you ready to be heard on this motion, or do you need a break to talk to Mr. Dalrymple?
Yeah, however, I'm ready and my comments will be brief.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Judge, I'm not sure that I understand the controversy that the state is bringing before the court. And as long as the state turns over every document and tangible item in their possession or in state law enforcement's possession, then I believe that they've compiled or complied with discovery. If there is discoverable information out there that for some reason they want a protective order, then I'd ask that they file a motion for a protective order. And if it's reasonable, we would agree to not share it with outside parties as long as the defense has complete access to it. I don't. So I don't have any objection to the court entering an order as long as it preserves the disclosure of the scope of the discovery that I've described, and as long as it does not foreclose the defense in the future filing either a motion to compel or one or two, a motion to exclude evidence if discoverable information has not been provided to the defense. I don't have any information that has occurred today. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. So as long as we get everything discoverable from the state, and as long as we can file motions in the future if we want to, I don't have any objection to whatever order that the court wants to either.
All right. Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. Mr. Jorgensen, anything further?
Yes, Judge, just a brief response to Mr. McCarthy's point and a sip of coffee, too. First, I forget to note that for the record, with respect to the S&P profile itself, that S&P profile that was uploaded to a database to begin the genealogical research, that will be tendered to defense.
To the defense.
At the moment, it remains in Dr. Green's possession. There will be additional testing, and once everything is done, the defense will get to that. So the defense can essentially recreate a genealogical investigation if they see fit. As to the substance of Mr. McCarthy's comments, I simply voice my concern that the purpose of the state's motion, essentially to seek an order from the court finding that the IGG information, as we've described, that is in the possession of outside third parties, the FBI and databases, private companies, that we are not obligated to disclose that. Again, I don't know what we could reasonably expect to discover if we had to attempt to obtain any of that documentation. And I would note for the record as well that anything we have as far as physical documentation will go to defense, including, again, that SNP profile. So I don't think it would make sense to leave open the possibility of a motion to compel, because what we're really asking the court to rule on is that the state is correct in its assessment that we do not have an obligation under Rule 16 to pursue or disclose any additional information that is not in our possession at this time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Jorgensen. Mr. McCarthy, anything else?
Judge, I'd ask the court not to enter that order because I don't know what I don't know. Yeah. The defense doesn't know what it doesn't know, in that we haven't filed a motion to compel. I trust that the state has disclosed everything, or will disclose every document, tangible item, every subject to Rule 16, but I don't want an order out there that stops the state from taking any affirmative action in the future. Frankly, I just don't know what the investigation is. I don't know the people to contact and everything. And also, apparently, we're talking about an investigation that was partially conducted by the FBI, and I'm not prepared to answer anything about that today. I understand that Mr. Lagerwall and Mr. Jorgensen don't have fiat over the FBI and can't order them around, but I'm not prepared to answer today what obligations the state of Idaho has with respect to information. That an investigation was conducted by federal authorities, and whether or not you can say today, well, just forget about it, you don't have to look into it any further. So I just think that what we're talking about right now would just be the subject of a motion to compel if the defense choose to bring one later. But we haven't done that, and I don't know that we will. And so I don't know that the court needs to enter an order at all.
The court. All right. Thank you. Well, let me start with the motion itself. Again, it was filed on July 14th, 2023, and you got to scroll down. It's entitled State's Motion in Limine for Non-Disclosure, or in the alternative, Motion for a Protective Order Barring Disclosure. And in the first paragraph, here's what the state is seeking, quote, an order finding that the state is not required to disclose any information relating to the use of investigative genetic genealogy, IgG, as an investigative technique in this case, unquote. So that's overbroad. I understand what you're arguing, Mr. Jorgensen. I am going to enter an order that you're not obligated. The state is not obligated to disclose any genealogical database not in its possession. So the databases that were used during this IgG process, my understanding is you don't possess them. That's right, isn't it?
That is correct.
Yeah, so I'm going to enter an order that you're not required to disclose any genealogical database not in your possession, but I'm not going to enter an order saying that you're not required to disclose any information relating to the use of investigative genetic genealogy, because the defense must get copies of what you actually get, such as the report. Even though I understand it's not your intention to introduce it at trial, still, Mr. Dalrymple and his attorneys have a right to know how it was that things were narrowed down to him, because it may be that they can use that information to prepare a defense.
There you go.
So what you have must be disclosed, but that doesn't, of course, include genealogical database because you don't have that. Does that make sense to you, Mr. Jorgensen?
It does, Your Honor, and I just want to note for the record again, for the sake of transparency and candor to defense and to the tribunal, that there is no report in our possession. Sound familiar? And it
Mm-hmm.
appears that we would not be able to get one even if we tried. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the crew of it. So, if I certainly understand the court's point, if we were ever to be obtain anything from the FBI, for example, of course, would we disclose it? But the chances of that occurring appear to be zero at this point in time. Wow, this is crazy. This is a crazy
The
document.
court got it. Okay. Yeah, got it. Okay. And it's, granting the motion in part and denying it in part preserves for you, Mr. McCarthy, what you were talking about. And that is in the future, if evidence develops such that the defense has a right to more than it's received, file a motion. I'll address it at that time. But right now, the only ruling is that the state doesn't have to disclose any genealogical database not in its possession. And Mr.
Mm.
Jorgensen argues that there's no report to disclose either. Well, clearly, under Rule 16, if he doesn't have the report, how is he going to disclose it? So, I mean, that's already not covered by the rule. But I do think the motion is well taken. It's fair to order at this time that the state need not go and try to obtain copies of those databases because that's not something in your possession.
Mm.
And Mr. McCarthy is equally able,
Wow.
perhaps through the use of Rule 17 subpoena process, to get those databases if he wanted them for his work for Mr. Dalrymple. Let me just pause 1 second. So, what this judge is saying is
Wow.
that the defense can subpoena the FBI to get that stuff. That's what I understand here, pursuant to Rule 17. But that I don't know what Rule 17 is. And then it
Right.
says that seems unlikely, but it may be likely.
Maybe.
I'm
You
leaving
don't
that
know.
door open. That's up to Mr. Dalrymple's and his attorneys to determine. So I'll enter a short written order on that. Anything else on that issue, Mr. Jorgensen, before we move on?
Would you like the state to prepare an order or will the court?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Thank you for offering, Mr. McCarthy. Before we move on to the next issue, anything else on that? Of course, there's going to be shit.
Judge, I just want the court to clarify for my client that the court's ruling on this issue has nothing to do with trial inadmissibility or admissibility of any topic. This is just the state turning over information in its possession to the defense.
Correct.
Because I think my client had some discomfort with whether or not any of this would be appropriate to introduce at trial. But the court's ruling has nothing to do with the admissibility or inadmissibility at trial.
That's correct. And Mr. Dalrymple, your lawyer is going to find out and then share with you what the state did that led it to accuse you. So your lawyer is going to find out what happened there.
Right, I got all that.
Okay, all right. And it's just the databases themselves that the state doesn't even possess, that the state is saying they want an order. You gotta, that they don't have to get that and turn it over. And that is the law. They don't have to do that under Rule 16. They don't have to go get those things not in their possession. So I'll enter a short written order on that. Now, Mr. Lager-Wall, was there anything else the state wanted to address today? Of course, there is.
Yes, Your Honor. The state did file a second notice of consumption. This was filed on July 14th. I'm ready to consume some food too. This is dealing with the consumption. We had this argument with the court prior. especially those pancakes with the sausage in the morning. Check, come hang out tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, daytime true crime. It was just about notifying the defense, appearing in open court so the defendant understands testing processes and procedures that will be employed. We specifically identified that this is dealing with additional hairs. These are beyond the hairs that we've already talked about with the court, and we've gotten to an agreement that the evidence could be consumed. This was dealing with Q29Q1. There was two hairs. We dealt with Q29Q1, one of the hairs. This would be hair number 1 of Q29Q1. There was no order for that prior. There's also Q29Q2. This hair again was found associated with the clothing of our victim, Darylyn Johnson. And then lastly, one of the hairs has been identified as Q29. We gave the identifying lab under seal. Wow. That's a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
We gave the lab. What the? Sorry I missed all your comments, everybody.
I know. I couldn't look. I'm getting so no okay, so what the court said is that doesn't preclude the defense from subpoenaing things from the FBI. But if the FBI doesn't have it, and somewhere I heard that the FBI didn't have it. I don't know where I heard that, but if the FBI doesn't have it, well, then you have spoliation of evidence or an improper investigation. And I'm sorry, you have Moscow, Idaho, and you have a small town that needed Idaho State Police and needed the FBI to help them. That's my understanding. Because it was an awful case. You probably even needed the university's police to help. I mean, to do all those interviews, to do all of that. Well, they step into the shoes of local law enforcement. I mean, the jurisdictional issues. This was not a crime that happened across states. This happened in Idaho. Okay, It happened in Idaho. So, if they had killed Ethan in Washington and the rest were found in Idaho, well, then it would be a cross-state investigation where the FBI would be involved, because if they have one suspect that did it both, he's crossed state lines. But we don't have that here.
And we don't even know how many people weren't interviewed, because there was a lot of people that left for the holidays.
Well, and
how many people were
and you have interviews from different agencies, probably.
I mean, you can count the Moscow PD force on 2 fucking hands. Well, I mean, more than that, but
yeah. So you have these agencies that stepped in to help as local law enforcement. They can't use that. I mean, they can't say, "Oh, we're a different agency, so sorry, you can't get that information."
No, you have people admitting it right there.
Help local law enforcement. They're investigating materials. You have to be able. You can't hide it. I still am not sure how Brian Kohberger became a suspect. I'm still not sure.
Well, it's how did the sheath get there?
Well, that's the other thing.
That's how they got him as a suspect. How did the sheath get there? That's where we, when you go through the PCA, there's different things. Yeah.
Yeah. So they got the sheath and they got the sheath and they found trace DNA, touch DNA, transfer DNA, and they put it in CODIS. I don't know if they put it in CODIS, but they should have. And they got nothing.
Did.
Yeah, I think they did. They got nothing.
Yeah. Because he just had a traffic infraction. I mean,
so they go to this genealogy thing. And they get this profile in a record time. Like
Hmm.
based on the witness, it takes time. Like they got it in a record time. Like how did you do that?
What's
Let's
up,
let's
Brett?
talk about the lab. Let's talk about the lab and how they did that in record time. Like, like what was this Speedy Gonzalez doing, like some kind of testing
Well,
that
that's
was
how
like,
you know. Right there. How long did it take you to get your DNA or your
well,
23andMe
that's, yeah,
email?
how did they do it in that time? That's what
Right
you want to
there.
know.
Well, that's what this
Oh, it
document
took
is.
yeah, it took a
Yeah,
while.
they sent in a profile like you or me would, and that's what they're saying. We did this like you or me would, not the not the route that you need to make sure you can't use the check marked don't use. It's a way to use to bypass it. They're basically saying, why do we
But
have to
did you
show?
see
Because
that?
it
Yeah,
was an investigative tool.
yeah. But you did see in that transcript that the sample, they were gonna give this the sample over to the defense to do their own testing. Is that right? I mean, that's what I read in the transcript.
Well, it, what you're using fresh source DNA to do to run all these tests. You're not reusing the same DNA over and over and over. How much would even be left is the
No,
bigger question. I don't
that's
out of
yes.
20
Was there
skin cells,
enough?
how much is left?
Yeah, was
You
there
know?
even enough?
Is there even enough for the defense to test it? And then with the unqualified, you're talking about all the processes to determine, that's what these people, these labs do, is they investigate or try to recreate these profiles.
yeah. So
Enrichment is what they call it for this DNA. How is it not qualified then? What does that even mean?
yeah, it's very, very, very suspicious. And so one,
Tons of paperwork
Bread to
too.
Kill is asking. Hold
What's
on.
up, Katie?
He's asked. Bread to Kill is asking if whoever did this cross state lines to commit the act, it could be considered federal, right?
It would have to be
Well,
state lines. He did cross because he
well,
went from
no. I mean,
Pullman to
look, you
Moscow.
have a
You're
murder.
crossing state lines
Yeah, I don't know
in the
that the
PCA.
residency of the I don't know if the residency of the killer um, qualifies as crossing state lines. There would have to be multiple killings across states,
Okay,
like
so just because he
serial
left,
killers. Yeah, like
so just
serial
because he
killers. Mhm.
left doesn't mean
It
okay.
doesn't
So if he
necessarily mean
committed a crime while he was in Pullman and then went to Moscow, then
in
that's when
Idaho.
that would take effect. Or yeah, Pullman and Moscow,
Yeah, if he
Washington and
committed a crime,
Idaho.
yeah, if he committed a crime in Idaho, he's subject to the jurisdiction of Idaho. But if he
No,
committed a crime in,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
What I'm saying is he would have to what you were saying a minute ago, he would have to have committed a crime in Pullman, Washington, and then committed the crime in Moscow, Idaho, for then it to have the federal effect or whatever you want to call it
Yes.
when it comes to the crossing state lines. So not necessarily that he's leaving to go do it; it's the crimes being committed across state lines is what uh, would
Yeah,
make
yeah,
that
like
take
it,
place. Okay.
yeah. So like if I go to Detroit and I commit a crime, well, I commit the crime in Detroit. I'm subject to Detroit, law. I mean,
Well, of
the
course.
feds aren't going to get involved. But if
No,
I'm
that's a
involved
given.
in killing people across the country, then the feds are going to be involved because
Mm.
there's a pattern. There's
Some
a pattern
Bundy
where
shit.
I'm committing crimes in different states.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I answered Bread to Kill's question. But the bottom line is we don't know there's a hair involved in this case, in that case with the transcript. There's a hair.
A hair,
And
not
and there's
20
multiple
skin cells.
hairs. They talked
Yeah.
about the other hairs, right?
2. Yeah, there's 2 of
Yeah.
them.
We don't have a hair in this
That's a lot
case.
stronger than 20 skin cells, just saying. A
Yeah.
hair is a hair is for sure.
So
A
the
hair is for sure. You could toss that sheath on a sweater. that somebody wore,
Exactly.
and it's right there on the sheath. It's right there.
Exactly. So those are the issues I have with that, and God, it gets under my skin. It's like I want to just jump in there and just say, Your Honor, like I just would not leave that courtroom
Mm-mm.
until something's done.
Yeah, and
But you know you can't do that.
it's sad that they got to keep asking and asking and asking and asking.